Welcome back to Leadership Institute's Careers Programming. This is What Do You Do? A conversation in public policy. My name is Matthew Hurt. I'm Director of Professional Services here at Leadership Institute. And our guest, we're so grateful that you've joined us in the studio today. Our guest is Grover Norquist. Grover, what do you do?
I run Americans for Tax Reform, which is a taxpayer group which works to oppose any and all tax increases, works to reduce taxes, to try and move from graduated income taxes to flat rate taxes, from many taxes to fewer taxes, to tax income at one time at one rate, consumed income at one time at one rate, not again and again and again. And in that capacity, also work to put together organizational meetings of not just tax groups, but groups that deal with religious liberty, the life issue, guns, school choice, all the freedom issues in Washington, D.C. on a weekly basis around the 50 states, generally on a monthly basis, and then now 24 overseas meetings.
That's really awesome. One of the things that you've just mentioned is again fighting these tax increases, both at the federal level and at state levels. How have you managed to do that? What have you implemented over the last several decades to hold policymakers accountable in that regard?
Well, the meetings run. We started them in 1993. 1993. Decades merge in 93. And that is when our friend Mr. Clinton got elected. Mm-hmm. And so the question was, how do you deal with that? And so we put together a group, about 20 people, to stop Clinton care. And stopping Clinton care was an important project line, but we realized that if we were going to stop Clinton care, we needed to slow down his fight for gun control, his tax increases, his other spending increases, all the various programs he had. And so the meeting wasn't just people who didn't like Obamacare, it was people who didn't like gun control, and people who wanted less spending in general, and people who worried about religious liberty, and people who thought about property rights, and all the other freedom issues around, all of which were threatened by the Clinton agenda. And that meeting got to be 40 people by the time of 1994, when Republicans won the House and the Senate. And that was an important project line because we realized then, so we had 40 people there. Mm-hmm. And again, the number two guy at the Republican National Committee was at each of the weekly meetings, and it broadened out. And that meeting also flowed from the insight that the modern Republican Party, and in some ways, if I've made a contribution, it was to take a look at who is the Republican Party, who is the center-right versus, and who is the left, and how are they structured. And the meeting is the physical embodiment of that.
Sure.
And as you sit around the room, and when I speak to groups of 10, 20, or 100 Republicans, I'll explain this, and I get nods from everyone. Yes, that's exactly it. And the argument is that people are around the table of the Reagan Republican Party, of the Republican Party, in every state and nationally, because on their vote-moving issue, they wish to be left alone. Now, that doesn't make them libertarians. They don't want to be left alone. They're not necessarily taking the pro-freedom issue on every issue,
sure,
but on the one they vote on. Gun owners, leave my guns alone. Homeschoolers, I want to be able to educate my own children. People want to send their kids to private school. The religious people who care about religious liberty, they want to be able to practice their faith, transmit it to their children. Evangelical Protestants, conservative Catholics, Orthodox Jews, Muslims, Mormons, people who, again, they don't agree how you get to heaven. Matter of fact, they disagree on how you get to heaven. And they're quite convinced that the guy on the other side of the table is going to Hades because he doesn't get Leviticus at all. And but they do agree that they should be left alone so they can get to heaven, and the other guys can be left alone to go to Hades if they wish. And that it's the freedom that they're looking for.
Sure.
Unlike European countries where they know everybody should be this religion or that religion. So around the table, property owners, taxpayers, small businessmen and women, independent contractors who don't want to be forced into a union. So around the table, you have quite a collection of people who have their hand in on taxes, on government spending, on leave my kids alone, leave my family alone, leave my faith alone, leave my Second Amendment rights alone. And again, this does not mean we all agree on everything. And one of the challenges or faults I saw in the modern conservative movement back 25 years and probably for the next 50 years is some people who go, we all have to agree on a 50-point list of things, right? No, it doesn't work that way. You can't get a country of 340 million people to all agree on something. You can get people to join your coalition because they agree on this one issue. And by the way, over time, some people care about certain issues when they're 20 and different issues when they're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. It's not always the same set of issues in their lives. But if what they want is to be left alone by the government in their zone, they are available to the modern Republican Party. And what I want is representatives of those groups, those tendencies around the table in Washington, D.C. We run about 90 people every week in person and about 30 online, and other meetings around the country and around the world. And this has allowed in each body for people, younger people, new people, because we're constantly looking for new people. You can get into a position where you feel, well, these 10 people have run the conservative meeting and the conservative movement in this state and always will. Well, they get older and older and they pass away. You want meetings that are flexible, that are open, that are constantly looking for young people, new people, people who've just moved into town, people, the vaping movement, which is people who vape, don't smoke cigarettes, they vape because so that they're not using tobacco because it's better for your health. It's like 97% better for you. And they want to make that decision for themselves. And the idiot government would rather tax them and make money and chase them away from vaping. They don't care if they go back to cigarettes. About 13 million people vape in the country. 80% of them will tell you they will vote on that single issue if that is in front of them between two candidates. Ron Johnson
in
Wisconsin was elected and said to the cameras on the night he was elected, I was elected with a vaping vote. There are 80 vape stores, or were 80 vape stores there. They went to all of them, handed out materials, said, our guy will not mess with you. He will leave you alone. And that was more than enough to win the election. So an issue might not strike you as, well, that doesn't seem very important. Not to you, but somebody else it does. And the customer is always right. The voter is always right. The voter has a vote. How he or she wishes to cast that vote is their business. I love a quote that I remember from when I was a kid from Phyllis Schlafly. Everybody's allowed to vote for my candidate for their own reason. And I remember at the time discussing with somebody why they should support Reagan, I guess. And yeah, they agreed on foreign policy or something. And then I'd want to sell them on 3 or 4 other issues. And I remember thinking, one fish, one hook. If their vote moving issue is the Soviet threat, and they're voting for Reagan for that, thank them and move to voter number 2. Do not go down 7 issues until you hit one he disagrees with, and now he's wondering whether he likes you anymore. So the idea that our team can sit around a table, it's a low-maintenance coalition, because the guy who wants to go to church all day looks across the table at the guy who wants to fondle his guns all day, and they both look over at the guy who wants to make money all day, and they each says, that's not how I spend my time. We don't have to.
And that's okay.
That's okay. Okay? They may not live in the same neighborhood. They may not vacation together, but they vote for the same candidate. And it is your candidate who has to embody each of these freedoms, who says, I'm going to leave your guns alone, your kids alone, your money alone, your property alone, your house alone, your children's schooling alone. your faith alone. That's what I'm going to do.
So Americans for Tax Reform has created an atmosphere where these individuals, whatever their vote moving issue is, can gather in D.C., but also all over the country and around the world to share ideas, to network with one another, and really focus on bringing new people into the movement and expanding. What does that look like on a weekly basis?
Well, we'll have between 20 and 30% in Washington, 3 minutes each. The meeting itself learned a lot from other meetings from when I was in college through to when I came to Washington, D.C. and went to meetings that I found were not as helpful as they could be. There's a wonderful story about a guy who goes into the sculptor's shop office and says, "That's a beautiful sculpture of Zeus that you have." And he said, "How did you make it?" They said, "Well, I had this big piece of marble and I removed all the bits that didn't look like Zeus. That's how I got Zeus." And the meetings that we have are my understanding of what kills meetings. Mm-hmm. So you speak for 3 minutes total. Mm-hmm. You're invited and urged to have handouts. Mm-hmm. He says, "Oh, I have so much more than 3 minutes." Then write it down and hand it out. And if someone tells you, "I don't have time to write it down, but I do have time to think out loud in front of," no. If you haven't thought it down well enough to hand it out, mm-hmm. I'm not even sure I want to hear 3 minutes from you. So, but nothing will kill you if you're talking for 3 minutes.
Sure.
People, there's some odd duck issues that people, legalizing hemp showed up 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what hemp was. I didn't know it needed to be legalized. But anyway, it's legal now. It wasn't before. It is now. And there's an issue that sort of wandered through and you saw it happen in real time.
Sure, yeah.
So in the meeting, 3 minutes total. No debates. Mm-hmm. No whining about the way the world should be. Whining is not work. Mm-hmm. Whining is not work. Whining is not work. And by having a meeting where nobody whines, we don't have to tell people that. Every once in a while, somebody comes to the meeting and they're new, and then they quit coming. And there was one person in particular who I'd asked to come because they came from a group that I thought should be represented. And I know I'd seen this person at lots of meetings. And they came for 3 meetings, never again. Then I remembered, oh, that person only came to whine about what other people hadn't done. That's why I remember her, because she talked at every meeting. but it wasn't useful talk. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad she stepped, we didn't throw her out of the meeting, but I'm glad she stepped aside and realized that that's not value added to this meeting. It's not mm-hmm. value added anywhere in the world, but it's not value added to this meeting in particular. 3 minutes, talk about the future. What are you doing? What are you doing? I got all the time. I got 3 minutes for anybody who's talking about what they're doing, because I need to know. That may not be something I'm working on as you look around, but, Congress's time or the state legislature's time is taken up by other issues than the one I'm focused on. Mm-hmm. And it's good to know what they are and to expect them and to know what moves other people. So these are the ones that really, the rules where lots of handouts, mm-hmm. brief comments, off the record, no arguing. Somebody says something you don't like, you can come back the next week. We had people at the meeting after the decision on Roe, ending mm-hmm. Roe, and there was Republicans for Choice, Ann Stone, mm-hmm. who always endorses the Republicans, mm-hmm. And the pro-life groups. And they each presented on how they saw this playing out and what they were going to do, and then they went and talked about where they could or couldn't work together. But they were both people, Ann tends to vote on foreign policy issues.
Sure.
But in the room, and they chat. If they're going to argue, they can do it and step outside and do it. So it really has made people feel comfortable working in the room.
So you've built trust, and the meetings are solutions oriented. So people are expected to come with, as you say, cheerful news often, mm-hmm. Little wins, and then steps to get to future victories. So you've got these meetings, and then Americans for Tax Reform specifically has built out a mechanism in public policy at the federal level and the state level, and I think even abroad occasionally, where you hold policymakers to account with a pledge. Can you talk a bit about that pledge?
Sure. The pledge was created in 1986 for the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And our goal was to get the marginal tax rates down. Reagan was cutting them. And the Democrats joined us in that fight. That shows you how far the Democrats have gone these days, because they watched the success of the 81, 82, 83 tax cuts, and they were willing to take rates down. It was revenue neutral because they still wanted their money, but rates came down, broadened base, and it was very good for economic growth, very helpful. But there was a concern by a number of Republicans that we're going to bring the rates down, but then won't it be easy to drift up 1 or 2 points? And there's a lot, and if it goes up 1 or 2 points without the deductions and credits, it'll be very expensive to taxpayers. So I created the pledge, sent it to about 5 Republicans, Gingrich and others, said, what do you guys think? I didn't get any response at all. But it basically said, I promise to the voters of America, to my state, that I'll never vote for a tax increase. And, not a rate increase, not a tax increase of any kind. We got 100 congressmen, 20 senators to sign. The president signed it, Reagan. And we used that to convince the other Republicans that it would be safe to do tax reform. Then the issue became so powerful in 86, people used the pledge as part of a campaign. And then in 88, all the Republican candidates for president except Bob Dole signed the pledge. And in the New Hampshire debate, Bob Dole, who was running in the lead, was challenged by Pete DuPont, former governor of Delaware, handed him the pledge, says, we've all signed the pledge. What about you?
Wow.
And Dole reacted like a vampire, and somebody tossed a crucifix in his lap. And his bad look on TV, he lost in New Hampshire. Bush took pledge, won. Then Bush said in the general election during the convention, he said, the Democrats will come and ask me to raise taxes. I will say no. They'll come and ask me again. I will say no. They will ask me again, and I will say, read my lips, no new taxes. So he made this central to his campaign. He was 14 points down when he said that.
Wow.
And then he won. Then he turned around and 2 years into his presidency raised taxes. And then was surprised when won the Cold War.
Yeah.
Okay? That should be on his tombstone. Drove Iraq out of Kuwait without sticking around to occupy the place forever. Shot one hole in the bottom of the boat. Tax increase. Okay? So the tombstone says, lied to the American people, raised taxes. That's his
legacy,
place in legacy. He did that to himself. And I worked hard to explain to those guys not to do that. And they did it. So they didn't learn. But nobody's life is a complete failure. Some people serve as bad examples. And George Bush has been the example for the Republican candidates not to raise taxes. And as a result,
you've got some images here.
I do.
Okay.
Do I hold this way?
I think you can.
Okay. Which one?
This direct to you.
Okay.
This one right here.
Oh,
yes, that one. Yeah.
Okay. From 1932 until the yellow line, 1994, the top is the Senate, the bottom is the House, and the little thing in the middle is the presidency, which is not important because we decided not to have a king, and we don't have a king, and the House and the Senate run things. Presidents can veto stuff, they can slow stuff down, but that's about it. So, as you see from this, Republicans won the House and Senate twice in 62 years. We had a one-party state.
It's crazy.
Okay. 62 years, Congress ran America Democrat. Yellow line, what was that? That's when 96% of Republicans signed the pledge never to raise taxes. 96%. And have kept it ever since. And so since the yellow line in 1994, we have had the Republicans win Congress 18 years, Democrats 6, 3-1, 3-1 ratio. Almost never 3-1. on signing the pledge. This changed the world. With the Republican Party, and this, sometimes I used to get yelled at about this because I told somebody, which was true, that when I was like 13 or 14, I was on the bus home from school, and our teacher had gone, democracy doesn't work. Nobody knows the name of their congressman or their senator. It's all hooey. Okay. And I thought, well, that's kind of true. There are a lot of positions people don't know who's running.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Republican Party became the party that would never raise your taxes, there might be other issues too from time to time. The one candidate might be suave and sophisticated, the other might be a bore, and the candidate would matter. But I bet you could get 45% of the vote as the candidate would never raise your taxes, and then you have to earn the other part, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when I was 14, it was surprising how few political leaders were listening to me. And so this didn't get done. But later, we took the pledge and said, not just is this something to use in an issue campaign for one piece of legislation, this is how we should brand the modern Republican Party. This is what Gingrich saw. This is what the Republicans saw, which is what all the presidential candidates since then have seen. And there was a wonderful scene where 9 Republicans were running for president, and the press, trying to trip them up, said, well, what if there was a deal you could have where there'd be $1 of tax increase for every $9 of spending cuts? And every one of them said, no, we're not raising taxes ever. And the Democrats thought, no, you should be for a tax increase. And the Republicans knew perfectly well that one would grow in any discussion and swamp the other, as it did when Bush negotiated a little tax increase for a lot of spending increase. There was a lot of spending cuts. There was no spending cuts. Yeah. It was all tax increases and spending increases. Bush got completely taken by that. So the Republican Party did what Coca-Cola did. Coca-Cola brands itself. They have what a Coke looks like, and they have quality control. And you can go to the store and pick up a Coke, and you don't have to ask the manager, could I have a taste to see what it's like? You don't read what's in it. You take it home because you know. But if you get home in your bottle of Coke and you're halfway through your bottle of Coke and you look down and you see a rat head in what's left of the bottle of Coke, you don't say to yourself, I'm thinking I might not finish all the rest of this Coke. I might not. You, in fact, go and you show all your friends your selfie with a rat head, and Coke has a problem.
You don't buy Coke again.
Yes.
And other people don't buy Coke.
Republican politicians who vote for tax increases are rat heads in a Coke bottle.
Mm-hmm.
They damage the brand for everyone else. And the Republican Party, to protect itself, distanced itself from Bush 41, including his son. His son signed the pledge immediately. I know what this means. I'm taking the pledge. I'm not doing that. I'm not dad. Okay? I'm me. I will not raise taxes. And he kept his promise. But that's the power of the pledge. And it stops. And so sharing that, other issues need to think through, what is the line in the sand? And the challenge you have is that every group, every issue has people who want to win everything tomorrow. And my pledge is terribly radical when the pressure is there about to push through and you stop it. Okay. The guys around Obama were going nuts. The pledge didn't let them do what they wanted to. But it's actually a very reasonable position. It's the Brezhnev doctrine. What's yours is yours and what's theirs is negotiable. We will never allow them to take more of your stuff. And by the way, every time we get a tax cut, that means it's permanent because it's not going up again. So every tax cut is a ratchet down. So over time, it is a very tough radical position. But I hear people, but now you should have a pledge that says a 10% cut or a 50% cut or, first of all, change it and it's worth nothing.
Mm.
And the power is that everybody knows what it means. There are a number of organizations that run very good issues who change their non-negotiable demand every 2 years. We're this guy and we have to have this. And nobody can remember what it is.
Sure.
Everybody knows exactly what the pledge says. Its enemies and its friends know exactly what it says. It doesn't move. Nobody ever goes, I didn't break the pledge. If they did. Okay.
Well, and of all the taxes that there are that you can possibly tax an earner or a property owner or anybody, you guys are focused on, and I see the stuff that you guys produce about any and all taxes, but one of your least favorite taxes, I think, is probably an income tax. And I think I see another chart there. I believe that's what this one is.
It is.
And so why don't you tell us tell us a bit about that?
This is the big project, which is 50 in 50. By the year 2050, 25 years from now, we want all 50 states to be income tax free. And we had started working 13 years ago in North Carolina to take a graduated income tax down to a flat rate and then the flat rate down to zero. And this is done by the great leaders of the North Carolina legislature by saying as revenue comes in, we're going to put a limit on what we spend. As revenue comes in above that, the more money, the extra money, will go into permanently reducing the income tax. So we're not taking sales tax dollars and back and
moving them around,
to replace income tax dollars. Taxes are going down as a percentage of the economy. Now, revenue is going up total, but as a percentage of your life, as a percentage of the economy, it's getting to be less important part of your life. So it's very gradual, but very radical over time. Archimedes said that I can give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum strong enough, I can move the world. Just me personally with my hand. Okay. Time is our lever.
Okay.
If you reduce something by 1% a year for a number of years, pretty soon you've made real progress. 1%, that's hardly anything. Yeah, but it compounds. Okay. And so with the income tax, North Carolina moved, and now other states are moving. In the United States, in the 50 states, there are green states. There are 8.
I see one, Tennessee, which is where I'm from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Green state, no income tax. Only became a no income tax state recently. They used to have a tax on dividends and interest. We worked very hard to make the case that you guys want to be a real no income tax state. New Hampshire only became a real no income tax state this year, 2025. They had a 5% tax on dividends and interest, same as Massachusetts.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. No better than Massachusetts is not where you want to be on taxing people's life savings. There are 15 yellow states, and 7 of them have become flat. These are flat rate taxes.
Okay.
7 are just in the last 5 years. We've got states to move to flat rate. So the ones with black dots on them, there are 12. Those are ones where these are all red states. The Republican governor and the leadership have agreed we're going to zero. Iowa went from a top rate of 8.6 down to a flat rate of 3.8. It'll now move all the rest of the way. Our friends in Arizona went down to 2.5%. When we get a Republican governor, they'll go to 0. Our friends in Louisiana voted to go to 3%, and now they want to go to 0. The states that have voted to automatically go to 0, Mississippi, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Indiana. 5 states are en route. If they just sit and twiddle their fingers, they go to 0.
Wow.
But North Carolina, they're going to have to vote again, but right now they're going to 2.49. Then they'll go the rest of the way to 0. South Carolina the House voted to go to 1.99. The Senate will do the same thing. They'll go down to 2% because they want to go under North Carolina and then to 0. So we're looking at about 15 years from now, there will be 20 plus states at zero. And 3 years from now, more than half of the states will have flat rate income taxes. So think about Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., I believe that we will begin 3 to 4 years from now, we'll begin a conversation of should we have a single rate at the national level? Half of the senators will go, well, we do that in my state. People like that a lot. So the movement here. So sometimes one of the things, as we've looked at the Leave Us Alone coalition, and the other part of that is the left's coalition.
Mm-hmm.
When Hillary Clinton was in upstate New York and she was doing a listening tour, because if she did a talking tour, she'd have lost the election. But she did a listening tour and smiled, and everybody's, oh, she's so nice. She smiled. She listened to me. And I got a call from a reporter up there who said Hillary Clinton had just said what the progressives need. It's one of those meetings like Grover Norquist runs, and where we get all the progressives together and think about where we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the reporter asked, what do you think about that? And I explained the Leave Us Alone coalition, why that's low maintenance, because nobody's in conflict with one another.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be left alone with your guns? He wants to be left alone with his money. He wants to be left alone with his faith. This one wants to be left alone with his family. They're not in conflict. They can do that easily. As a matter of fact, each one is safer if they all get what they want.
Sure.
Everyone is for everybody. I said, what would Hillary's table look like? Around Hillary's table, trial lawyers, labor union bosses, big city political machines, the two wings of the welfare movement, the dependency movement, people locked into welfare dependency, and those people who make $150,000 a year, managing the dependency of other people, making sure they don't get jobs and become Republicans. You have all the coercive utopians, the people who have a crisis that may be real and may be imaginary, but their solution to the crisis is more government now. And I saw this highlighted when Al Gore asked to come to the Wednesday meeting.
Oh, wow. Like vice president or
after vice presidency.
Okay, after vice president.
After vice presidency.
Okay.
He was doing his movie about
Inconvenient Truth.
Yes, Inconvenient Truth, that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he came and they spent hours getting ready to show part of the movie and with the sound and everything to the group. And I said, come and watch a normal meeting for an hour, and then we'll do half an hour with you and turn that to an hour, and we'll talk. Okay. But I want you to understand who you're listening to, who you're talking to. So he came, and I asked a question. And I said, I remember when it was global cooling on the cover of Time or Newsweek. And the answer was, use less energy, raise the cost of energy, ride bicycles, use less energy. And then when it was global warming, it was use less energy, ride more bicycles, it's the same list of things to do. And then when it's climate change, it was the same list of things to do. Cooling, heating, changing, but same list of to-do list. Are there any things on that 10-point list of things to do that if the angels came down and sat on your shoulder and said, it's not cooling, it's not heating, or it is, but it's not man-made, are there any of those things we shouldn't do anyway? And before I'd finished the sentence, no, I should do them all. Okay. He had a prescription he wanted you to have, which is why we have washing machines that take 3 hours to wash, and dishwashers that take too long to wash, and lights that convince you have glaucoma. Just all the things that they do to make life a little bit less pleasant, all in the name of
control.
Control, but it's warming, it's cooling, it's but there've been different things. First of all, it was overpopulation. Now it's underpopulation, but we'll have rules for both. So around those are the course. Some of those guys make a buck doing that, but some of them just like to tell other people what to do.
Sure.
So around the left's table are people who use the state either to get other people's money or to push them around and tell them what to do. That left of center table can function as long as we are stupid enough to throw taxpayer money in the middle of the table.
Mm-hmm.
If we say no new taxes and mean it, and that pile of money begins to dwindle down, because when there's enough money, they're around the table. One for you, one for you, one for you, one for you. Okay, like the scene in the bank robbery after the movie after the bank robbery, right? You go, ooh, everybody's rich now. When that dwindles down because we're not raising taxes for them, they begin to look at each other, like the Kennedy kids, and there's only one six-pack in the middle of the table. And this is not going to work. And it looks a lot more like the second to the last scene in the lifeboat movies, where they're trying to decide who to throw out of the lifeboat or who to eat. Okay, because the left is not made up of friends and allies; it's made up of competing parasites. Mm-hmm. And if we don't feed them taxpayers, they'll turn on the guy sitting next to them. Mm. Our job is don't raise taxes, don't feed them, force them to fight amongst themselves to push other people away from the table. Because when they get pushed away from their table, they come over to our table and get a job and become Americans and stop wanting to steal other people's stuff. So all of our coalitions work should increase liberty, increase the number of people who want to be left alone, decrease the funding for people who want to make a living off of other people. Mm-hmm. So you make the other team smaller, our team bigger, and the world freer. And on our team, the independent contractor movement is a very important piece of that. 60 million people have some income from independent contractor work. Mm-hmm. That's not all full-time, but a lot of it is full-time. Mm-hmm. But 60 million are touched by that, and the unions are trying to kill that. That's the guy running for mayor in New York wants to kill that dead. So those are the two competing coalitions. We understand that. We want to strengthen the center-right coalition and weaken the takings coalition. And then we want to use federalism. This is the 50 states. Mm-hmm. And you've seen all those things where U-Haul tells you that you get a lot of U-Hauls to leave New York and a lot of U-Hauls to leave California, and they have to pay people to drive them back from Texas and Florida to the states where people are leaving. We are looking at every 10 years redistricting, moving more congressmen and therefore more electoral college votes from blue states to red states. In this next year in 2030, it'll be as if Wisconsin moved from being a blue state to a red state, and you just attached it to the red state people. 12 votes. Wow. 12 congressmen, 12 congressmen, senators, and 12 electoral college votes. Every 10 years. So as we cut taxes, as we move school choice through those states, as we move right to work through those states, as we make the 25 to 30 red states stronger, more attractive, create more jobs, bring more people into them, we turn them into more important states for choosing the presidency and who runs Congress. In 10 to 20 years, it'll be increasingly difficult. It's already difficult now. It's increasingly difficult for the Democrats to win the presidency simply because they've chased people away from the blue states and they've given away electoral college votes as a result. And so our job is to focus on making the red states as successful as possible so that they're models. Eventually, we win when the blue states say, okay, this is not working. We want to be a little more like Tennessee, a lot more like Tennessee, and less like New York. And we don't have to have tension in the country. You can, if you want to live in Rhode Island and impoverish the state, you can. But many people will decide to leave Rhode Island. And some of the people at some point in Rhode Island will go, this isn't working. We want to be like a red state. We want a low flat rate income tax, perhaps zero. We want to give choice to our parents for education. We want religious liberty. We want to have a right to work for everybody. Nobody should be forced to join a union. These are all, this is the game plan. The reason we have 44 states that have center right meetings. We've had 50 at different times, and we will have them again. The tough ones are Montana, where Montana, North Carolina, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, the big city and the capital are several hundred miles away from each other. And so getting that meeting organized and maintained is more difficult than others. And again, the 24 countries around the globe. Argentina had a meeting. The pledge was used by Milei when he ran. He signed the pledge on national television. The Brazilian candidate for the Conservatives has signed the pledge. I'm going to Costa Rica where they're going to use the pledge as well there in the next election. So the pledge itself, getting a party to say, we won't raise your taxes. And that's raising taxes is what politicians do instead of governing. If you hold taxes down, you then have to govern. And I guess in terms of my work, I want much smaller government. And the quote that's gotten more pickup than others is when I was asked by a lady at the National Public Radio, so you want to abolish government, kind of thing. And I said, no, I don't want to abolish the government. I just want to make it small enough that you could drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub. So small enough to fit in the bathtub. And not abolish, just smaller. And then I continued. I said the actual physical goal is over 25 years dropping government in half as a percentage of the economy. And in the following 25 years to drop it in half again, which basically gets us back towards where we were before we went crazy with the New Deal and so on.
So this has been a long-term effort of yours, and we've talked a lot about Americans for Tax Reform, but now, Grover, let's talk about you. So you grew up in Massachusetts, not a state known for its freedom orientation, but how did you become part of this conservative movement? You were college Republicans, or where did you start?
Well, I grew up in Massachusetts, grade school, high school, college, and then emigrated to the United States after that. But I was active politically in high school. My local town, Weston, they sold all of the annoying right-wing books. I Led Three Lives by Philbrick, all the anti-communist books, Whittaker Chambers and so on, his stuff on his embarrassing things for the left to have to deal with. I got them for like a nickel or a quarter and sat in the basement one summer and read them and decided that the Soviet Union was a threat to the world and that bigger government was a threat, certainly. And so was aware of that and also came to the understanding that government can be a threat to liberty even in the United States, at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, can be abusive. And focused on realizing that taxes were the point at which the state interacts with people to begin with.
Sure.
If you look at America's creation over taxation by Britain, the first revolt against Washington was over his tariffing, his taxes on cider. And then you had the reaction in the 1830s to the tariff of abominations. The South was heavily taxed through tariffs, and didn't appreciate it. The Civil War was a great deal driven by tariffs. So the 30 years, but in 1930 it was all tariffs, and South Carolina pulled out its troops, and they actually took the tariffs down. So this has been the pressure point in America and in other countries, taxes at Rome for a long time. It is where countries make or break themselves, where people succeed or fail
Mhm.
because the government is too big or is limited on its side. So I knew that. When I was in college, I worked with college Republicans. I worked with the Libertarian Association. I worked with the conservative group. There are lots of different groups. Came down to Washington to run the National Taxpayers Union. Came back up to D.C. To go to Harvard Business School, and back down to D.C. I worked with the Chamber of Commerce. I worked with Americans for the Reagan Agenda. I worked for 6 months with actually the College Republican office, which was great organizing experience on campuses. And then in 85 is when Americans for Tax Reform was created and offered to me to run by the Reagan administration, which I did. And having seen the opportunity with this tax group to what the pledge could do and what it did do and how we worked it, I just built that up and built from that. And then all the other things that we do, coalition work. So the coalitions are not run by ATR. The coalitions are run by every state runs their own coalition. We help set them up. We walk through with them. Here are 13 things that work. Here's a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. Come look at the meeting we have in DC, see what you see the meetings near you, see what you think works, what doesn't work. You tell us what your state needs in terms of and other countries. Countries are very different. We've been meeting in Hong Kong, and which some of the government, it's very interesting, and so those sort of all flowed out of organizing, and I guess each time we do that, we learn more. I would recommend to younger people getting involved. One of the things I did do in DC, different than some other folks, is I got involved in DC. There was a group called Funniest Celebrities in DC, and I helped them get the Republicans to bring the Republican congressmen, senators to do comedy there. There, it's half Democrats. You met a bunch of Democrats and Republicans, and you can get along pleasantly with people on the comedy show. I work with the Shakespeare Theater and perform each year with Democrat congressmen, senators, press people, and I help recruit Republicans for that. So you meet a lot of people. There's a temptation to say, oh, the way to go be friends with a Democratic congressman or senator or whatever is to compromise your principles. No, that's not. Be pleasant, be a decent person, be a nice guy, be cheerful, listen to them, the way you would with a non-political friend. You don't want to sacrifice your principles. If that sort of ruins the whole point of what you're trying to get working on. But it helps to work. I was involved with the portrait gallery. They did a piece of art, which was maybe 50 or 60 famous DC people. And they called and asked me to help get Republicans. And one of the things that was frustrating was I called a bunch of Republicans who they had agreed were famous and successful and conservative leaders. And I said, come down. They will take your picture. You'll get the professional photo of yourself. Most of us don't have that. Okay? And they will put it into something that's going to be a semi-permanent showing there where they interview you. And then you give part of a speech until you hit a word, and then it kicks over to somebody else and it bounces back and forth, and then you show up again at some point. That was the art part of it, right?
Okay.
But they also did a book, which was you being just writing 300 words on what you thought people should know. And the number of, I'm making list names because it's too embarrassing, but the grown-up, serious people who run real organizations who were offered the opportunity to do that they couldn't be bothered to. And I'm thinking, this is your chance to show up as a conservative free market guy, and tell your story, not be interpreted by somebody else. And I would recommend to young conservatives, libertarians, activists getting going, be part of life, be part of your social life, be part of what is it. Never give up on your principles. You don't trade those away. You don't have to. You need, because I've taken this approach, I often get invited to do the first something. So they did the Washington Post was going to do this new weird way of interviewing people. So they did this thing where they interviewed. I know it was slightly different. But I was a good sport. So I did it. And they did the interview. It's fine. It's good. But it just, you want to help? I did. I've been asked to help do interviews where they're going to hire somebody on CBS was one of them. Could you come over for an hour and help? These are semi-famous people now who were looking for the job and they wanted to do an interview with a person, a real, person, and with real issues and so on. And so you do that. Just be there, be part of whatever town or city you're in, not just the political part of it. Be part of the social setup, and not giving up on principles. I went into the Lion's Den. They had the conservative had a group, the American Spectator put together. We get together Saturday Night Club. Never met on Saturdays. That was a joke. And they'd think deep thoughts and have fun together. That was great. But it was all conservatives. And there was one the liberals were putting together, and they'd had the Speaker of the House, who was a lefty Democrat, and the head of the Senate, and somebody else, and then me as the fourth guy, the conservative. And it was just very pleasant and everything. It's all, I didn't say anything liberal or whatever, but one of the writers goes, well, he's very pleasant, but I suppose if you're trying to run a mass-based political organization, it's good not to be a blankety blank. Okay. And yes, it is good not to be blankety blank. There's no reason not to be pleasant in and around and with non-political people you disagree with politically, I don't play golf, but I know some people play golf and they'll play people you're playing golf with or whatever. And have that part of you that is the outreach part. Don't make your principles the outreach part.
You can identify places in the culture to be a decent human being and to find people. When I first moved to DC, I went to a ton of Center for American Progress events and just got to know people. I was genuinely curious about it.
Yes,
and free drinks. And so I identified those opportunities. And it sounds like, particularly early in your career, you were also the guy who was accessible. Like you showed up when something, you were around, but then you showed up when something was needed and people thought of you. They said, okay, we've got this organization we'd like to run outside of the White House. Let's come up with a list of 3, 4, 5 people who could do it. And you were on the list.
Yeah. Within the center right, be known by the people who will have jobs, will have projects. And it may not be a full-time job. I mean, mine was a project. I turned it into a career. And it was the kind of thing that could have been over in a year and a half.
Well, we had a guy who just moved to DC and he was trying to get involved and try to get a full-time job in the conservative movement. And I thought of him for some pretty high-profile parties. One of the first events we met at was 16 years ago at a Christmas party at Howard Segamark's house.
Oh, yeah.
And I had an opportunity to invite a guy new to DC to 2 of those recently, and now he's onboarding somewhere based on his reliability at that kind of event.
Yeah. In addition to putting yourself in those positions, bring somebody with you. Bring someone with. I was told that was called DC dating, and when and as a result, I would often take somebody from the office or somebody I knew to an event with me. If I was going to an event, I wasn't married, I'd bring somebody. It wasn't a date, but I was like, you could bring somebody. So you'd bring somebody, and they get to meet people, and it. And it's because otherwise new people in town don't get to do that. So bring a friend, introduce a friend around. And it may not seem like a terribly important thing, but it's more of an event than he or she was going to that day, because they hadn't been invited yet. So share.
So we've got just a couple of minutes left. We're thinking about this again through the lens of people who are looking to pursue a career in public policy. No one pathway is the same. So what is one bit of advice you would have for someone who is looking to carve out maybe a career, an accidental career or purposeful in public policy impacting what we're doing in Washington or anywhere around the country?
Write articles online, write articles, tweet intelligently, share things that are interesting thoughts where someone would go, that was interesting. Not scream and yell tweets. Those don't get you anything. They may get you people retweeting you, but not hiring you or thinking of you. I think one of the things that was helpful is I had an idea and I wrote a piece for the American Spectator, and then they said, do you want to keep doing this? And so I ended up writing a monthly column for them. And then more people see your stuff, and then other people. The visibility in politics often comes from things you write. If you go to an event, ask an intelligent question, not a aren't I important question, but a question where I remember him, I saw him, he asked an intelligent, useful question, not a smarty pants question, but be seen and share good ideas, listen to other people, and take the opportunity to go to different events when they're there and introduce yourself to people. And something that George Herbert Walker Bush did well enough to get elected president, but it didn't get him reelected. He wrote letters to everybody that he ever met, little short, nice to meet you letters. And I remember thinking, that's kind of goofy, but every time I get one from somebody, I go, oh, that's really nice. I think it's important when I get one. So perhaps it's more important than he did it better than I do it, and other people do it better than I do it. But that is something that now with emails, it's easier to do. The email means less. Actually write it out in handwriting and thank them for getting together or whatever the invite was to do. Yeah.
That's actually how I got my second job in the conservative movement. I was here at Leadership Institute. We had a big donor dinner in November of 2009. I was seated at a table with donors and elected officials, and I took a note of all the individuals at the table. One of them was, at the time, State Senator Alex Mooney from Maryland. I wrote a letter to everyone who I had dinner with, and then for his letter, I said, enclosed is my resume for your convenience. And I wasn't asking for a job. 2 interviews later, at the end of the second interview, he said, do you have any questions for me? And I said, what am I interviewing for? I haven't applied for anything. And he said, oh, you sent me a letter. I thought you were applying. And I actually got my second job in the D.C. area by sending it was nice having dinner with you letter.
No, I think those are important. And the other one is the guys who want to stake out, extreme positions because they're fun. That the stamping up too late at night with yaff people, and that's fine with 8 people in the room. But there's a limit to that. Because so much of life again takes time, and this is understand as you work the difference between losing and compromising. Compromising is getting what you want more slowly than you wish you could, but as quickly as you can given circumstances. You have to get other people's votes. You have to convince people to do stuff. It'll always take, since you've thought it up and you know exactly what you want to do, how come we can't do it now? If you're trying to get from Washington, D.C. to Japan, and you wake up in Missouri, that's a step in the right direction. You are on the road to Japan, okay? But if your feet are all wet and everyone around you speaking French, you've been going the wrong direction. That's called losing, okay? So when you're going away from what you want to do, that's losing. The Democrats will always tell you that's compromising. The Washington Post will tell you that's compromising. No, that's losing. And people get confused when it is good to compromise in the sense of to get as much as you can and take it rather than go, I'm not taking it unless I can have everything. That way ends Napoleon's career. But recognize there is a difference between getting where you want to go more slowly than you want. That's compromising. That's okay. Okay. As long as you're trying as hard as you can. Heading in the wrong direction is called losing. And that's never compromising. There may be times you lose. That happens in life. Okay. But it shouldn't be on purpose.
Awesome. Well, Grover, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Sharing your experience at Americans for Tax Reform and your experience finding your way in this conservative movement. Thank you so much for joining us for What Do You Do? A Conversation in Public Policy. You can find us online at leadershipinstitute.org/training for all upcoming events. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.